And you're live on Newsfile this Saturday. My name is Evans Mensah. Something is away. Let's get into it now. We will start with Saglemi, but before that, I will introduce my guests who are joining me this morning for Newsfile. Dr. John Kumah, MP for Ejisu and Deputy Finance Minister, will join me. We'll also be joined by Alex Segbefia, NDC Director of International Relations, Director and former Health Minister. Dr. Theo Champon, he's a political risk analyst and economist, will also join us. And then Professor Bokwe, Professor of Finance and Economist at the University of Ghana, will also join us. Remember, as always, that Newsfile is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Star Assurance, your solid partner. Ashasa University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Duraplus, how you get your water matters. Remember, where Duraplus goes, water flows. St. Thomas Eye Hospital, providing excellence in eye care. Haptel, everything you. And then My Way Insurance, you just have to dial *165# on the MTN to join. McDan Aviation, your dependable private aviation request solved. We'll get to the budget, which is the main item on the menu this morning. But I want to quickly get the Saglemi housing albatross out of the way, because there are a few more things that we've learned in the last few days that we'll talk about. I'm talking about the general problem with our affordable housing care. It definitely appears so, because we seem not to get it right. Watch a few of these, and I will come back and talk.
What makes the Saglemi Affordable Housing Project even more complicated is that government has expended approximately, as I mentioned earlier, $196 million. And upon further consideration, government does not intend to expend additional taxpayers' money towards the completion of the project. Thankfully, the state has some equity in the form of land and assets on site that can be leveraged upon for the completion of the project by the private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, after a painstaking period of assessment, verification, and consultation, government has decided to explore the possibility of selling the Saglemi Affordable Housing Project, covering the 1,506 housing units at current value, to a private sector entity to complete and sell the housing units to the public at no further cost to the state.
This abandoned project cost the taxpayer $200 million. 6 years since the change of government, it has been abandoned and left to rot. The facility has been taken over by rodents and other animals. Government announced only last week it was open to selling it off to a private developer. Well, the minority say no way.
I'm shocked with what I've seen and the team here, and I know you are also very shocked about this. And going back to Parliament, I don't think we have to go and rest. If there should be anything that we have to do as a committee in Parliament to compel this government to look for funding to complete this project without using any private developer, we have to do it. So any private developer that will partner the government to complete this project, the project will be taken away from you.
A member of the Committee on Works and Housing, Gisela Tete Abutui, a professional architect, warned citizens to turn the heat on government to complete the project.
And I'm very disappointed. Number one, there are 5 policemen who are patrolling this place. This is large estate. How much security can they provide for this? The concrete walls over there. When you enter the rooms, you see that the switches have been cut, have been pulled off and cut off, and they've been left there. The switches are Hager switches. That is not a cheap brand. Just look at the doors that are there. Good quality finishes and good quality fittings. So if this has been left to arrange to this manner, we should be asking very serious questions of the government and why they have left it to this point. I'm very disappointed. And as an architect myself, it breaks my heart to see so much waste, so much waste.
Nkranza South MP Emmanuel Kojoe-Jekun is alleging a deliberate plot to run down the facility and sell it off to cronies.
It's just a matter of somebody trying to run it down so they can pay cheap. They can organize with their cronies to be able to get it cheap. And trust me, I can prophesy to you today that this is going to be sold to a family member. This is going to be sold to a friend. This is going to be sold to a business that is close to these guys in power who are saying that it's a failed project.
So this facility that cost the ordinary taxpayer more than $100 million has now been left to rot, and the minority are not leaving this hanging. They want urgent governmental action to fix the mess that is now the Saglemi project. They say they are completely against the privatization of this project and have been issuing a threat to any potential private investor that if you get involved in this project, a 2025 NDC government will not honor any agreement you had with the current government. We've been inside, we've seen the fittings having been completely stolen, electrical materials, the burglar proofs, the glasses, the doors, the windows, everything is gone, and this building is back in a state that is uninhabitable. They say that a future NDC government will complete this project and no privatization will be allowed. From Saglemi, here in Ningo Pram Pram, Kweku Asante for JoyNews.
So the key question then remains, what do you do with the Saglemi albatross? Do you privatize it? The government has taken a decision to do so. Or, as the NDC maintains, find money and keep it as an affordable housing initiative. That's where the controversy is. Let's bring in my guest. Engineer Mahama Abdullah is a civil engineer, road and building consultant. He also joins us on this conversation. And I will start with him, Engineer Mahama. Where do you pitch your tent? Do you pitch your tent with the government's idea of privatizing it? Or you go with the NDC argument, find money, the state can, and keep it as an affordable housing scheme?
Morning to your cherished viewers. Immediately I got to know that the government had decided to shift from completing the Saglemi Housing Project into the hands of a proposer to leave the construction into the hands of a private developer or a commercial entity. Then I realized that we have already defeated the concept of the affordable housing unit. Before that, we know almost $200 million has been sunk into the project. And per the minister's own assessment, of course, I don't know how he got his assessment done, we need about $46 million more to be able to bring water, electricity, storm or sewage systems so that it can become habitable. Now, even with what has been done so far, if you do the basic analysis, the unit is going for almost $198,000 United States dollars. That has already gone beyond the affordability, because ordinarily, some of these private developers who are actually constructing basic affordable two-bedroom units, for the purpose of this as well, them just quote in dollars. It's within 25 to 35,000 United States dollars. You can get yourself a decent two-bedroom accommodation. Now, if we already are hitting $198,000, it means that purpose has been defeated. So I'm not actually siding with the NDC, but me as a professional, I've already refuted that government's decision to hand it over to public or private property developer to actually complete and then sell. Or you can just get the figures and analyze what I'm talking about. $197,000, $198,000 is no means a joke to any average medium or middle income earner to be able to raise that amount of money to purchase a unit of that facility. But let's put this in context. I want to find out from government, is it proper that we abandon Saglemi, and other similar projects. You have followed. I think we've been having these discussions for some time. I want government to answer this question: what has happened to the intent of the SY Kufuor's administration, where they started this similar affordable housing? Now, if any of your listeners or viewers knows the Suhum Kufuor stretch of the road very well, when you're about to get to the All Nation University on the Suhum Kufuor stretch, about 500 meters before you get to the All Nation University, look on your left-hand side, just about 200 meters from where they are putting up the new regional office under the Agenda 111. There is this abandoned skeletal construction with the columns, the slabs, the frames, completed in 2008. And since 2008, those buildings have been left at the mercy of the weather. And these were all classified under affordable housing. Now, about 500 meters away from the affordable housing is where you have the university, All Nation University. About 700 meters away from that building or those projects, you have the ECG regional office. About 1.4 kilometers away from the building, you have the Ghana Water Company Limited. About 1.7 kilometers away from that building, you have GASEM and you have GBLE. Now, a lot of these people who are actually working in these areas commute from Accra, Suhum, and its environs to come to work. And this is a government project abandoned in few seconds drive away, 2008, 2009. Now, when you look at this and you look at the Saglemi, which is almost at the advanced stage of completion, it's all despicable that government has abandoned this project and is at the court trying to deal with the situation, taking some people to court, and we don't even know the head and tail of the outcome. This is my basic introduction before you can, if you want to answer any further question, I was saying.
That I wanted to get from you. On the Saglemi one in particular, government says they haven't abandoned it, but they just can't find additional money to complete it. So they're going to privatize. They're going to privatize it. Question, straight one, is that a way to go for you?
No, not
Okay.
at all.
So
I don't subscribe to any of those government proposals.
Okay, so if it's not privatization, are you suggesting the government should borrow more money to finish it?
We need to borrow the money and finish those buildings so that it will become, at least even government can subsidize. Now this government money and it's the taxpayers' money. If it's in the hands of a private business person, he is into to make profit. But if you give this to government, if government takes over this own construction and decides to do it, government can subsidize because you are already constrained with accommodation. So what is the issue? If government decides to subsidize and then let it be occupied by at least even the security
if
services.
government, Mr. Mama, if government does that, the subsidization will be pretty significant. First of all, you have to get a loan to finish it. Then, when you finish, to still keep it as an affordable housing unit for any person who wants it, you have to find an additional money to subsidize it. That definitely, in the current economic condition we're facing, doesn't sound like a realistic prospect, does it?
Well, my subsidy in this case might be even a long-term payment policy. Not necessarily just reducing the cost of it, but you see, if you leave this in the hands of any private business practitioner or private business developer, he may not have the patience to wait for maybe 15, 20 years before he would have finished paying. But government having its own money and government knowing that if I subsidize or I extend the time of payment, whatever it is, with this compound interest agreement, I will get my money at the end of the day. That's what I'm saying. That so nobody's coming to arrest government in the first place. You get it? So what's the business or what's the benefit if government decides to give this to a private business person, a developer, and then this person comes to do this construction and increase the price from more than $198,000 to about $250,000?
Let me bring in my other guest. I want to bring in Dr. Tue Champon into this. Doc, I want to take you back to 2013 when the idea of Saglemi was first conceived. And when it was conceived, even when the Parliament discussed it, in fact, this is October 31st, 2012. That's when the Parliament gave approval to the deal. At that time, the anticipated cost of a unit, if you read the Hansard, was pegged at $50,200 per unit. And remember that it was supposed to have been that first 1,500 completed. The idea was to complete that first phase 2016 latest. Then dollar to the cedi was around 1:4. So $50,000 then, $50,000 then, was just slightly over 200,000 cedis. Today, even if you're keeping that cost constant and not changing it, and we know that's not realistic, $50,000 today is in excess of almost close to 2 million cedis. Even at that cost, it's still not affordable. So we've already lost the affordable housing conversation around Saglemi. Should we privatize or should we get a loan and finish and subsidize and make it cheaper and bring it down further? What's the most prudent thing to do now?
Yeah, good morning, and very interesting questions that you asked. But before I get to that, I mean, why it baffles me, right? Why, as a people, we often throw a lot of money away and waste it in some of these schemes, when if we were running these things as our own private businesses, we would have actually made it work. You know, there's so much waste and so much inefficiency within the governance, architecture that we run in the country. And sometimes I'm even tempted to believe that maybe it's deliberate, because the same people, if they were running their private businesses, wouldn't be engaging in some of these, activities. If you look at the Saglemi issue, my brother actually is an architect, and we've had a number of conversations around this. Per affordable housing standards, at least we should be able to be doing 2 to 3 units, 2 to 3 bedroom for about $30,000, right? If you take $30,000 and you work that out at the current exchange sort of rate, we may be talking at around 500,000 sort of Ghana cedis. But let's just think more broadly in dollar terms. So 50,000 USD for starters, even as of 2013, was not affordable by any stretch for many ordinary Ghanaians. But also coupled with the fact that for many of the houses or the housing schemes, we also haven't really thought about the value chain where you are able to integrate the financial or mortgage and other securities to allow people get onto the housing market. So for example, like here in the UK, the government has got a scheme where if you are a first-time buyer, all you need to do is to put down a 5% mortgage, and then the government, through your bank or other lenders, would pretty much provide a guarantee on the remaining 95% of the mortgage that will be given to you as a loan. We haven't thought really, in my view, about the end-to-end process. I think on the Saglemi issue, the government should really find the money and complete the rest of the project, and then maybe get a facilities management company that will be involved or help to actually complete and manage that. We've got state housing company, and we have, I believe, other similar entities within the space, including even SNIT, which could come in to support. I don't really embrace or fully support the idea that we should privatize, any and everything. Because even if we did end up privatizing Saglemi, the point is that whoever is coming in to put in extra money to make sure that the buildings are completed, the unit cost will still end up going up much higher. And that really defeats the whole notion or idea of affordable housing.
Professor Bokwing, where do you stand on this?
Yes, thank you very much. I lean towards Dr. Tio's position. Evans, I think in this country, we use the poor as a care of. And not that really we are committed to addressing the issues about the poor. So, because from the conceptualization and the pricing mechanism is above the means what the poor will be able to afford. So it's almost clear that these houses may end up going to the middle class and the upper middle class themselves. So we only use the poor as a face shield to hide our real intention to enhance our own agenda. When you put all these things together, you see a country that is just not serious about inclusivity and social progression. A country that doesn't have enough revenue could not afford close to $200 million sunk into a project for these years. It typifies a country that is not serious. It typifies a country that doesn't appreciate that resources are scarce and that those scarce resources have alternative uses. And that the extent to which you maximize the alternative uses of scarce resources, that's what makes the difference between the rich and the poor. So for a country to have allowed close to $200 million sunk in there, come on. You have to look, it's very sad. It's not the only thing. I think Engineer Abdullahi mentioned other similar interventions in the past that were not completed, abandoned. Apart from this, you also see this even across individuals' households. You know, the essence of money in finance is not for it to be held at one place. So we talk about debt merry-go-round. Money is supposed to go round. Now, so if you spend close to $200 million over these years, you are not turning it around. Then it means that you are not being efficient at using your limited or scarce resources for the benefit of the common good. And again, I lean towards what Dr. Teo said, that these things perhaps are intentionally orchestrated, rehearsed for the benefit of the privileged few. So when we talk about inefficiencies, it necessarily does not mean that it is the seed that benefit from it. Human beings benefit from inefficiencies, whilst the majority suffer for it. Okay, so sometimes we package some of these expensive and use the poor as a face shield, but it's for the margins that we will get. And nothing happens. Nobody will charge anybody for causing financial loss to the state. And you find it cutting across many sectors of this country. I think that if the focus, as you described from 2013, was to provide affordable housing to the poor, then government intention now to privatize it actually runs contrary to that original intention. So then we have to come clear whether now it's about affordable or perhaps this will want to. Because with private sector coming in and all of that, it means that that will certainly be within the reach of the poor at current exchange rates. And even at that time, as Dr. Teo said, pricing it at 30,000 clearly. And if you look at the frictions, and this is where my interest is, you know, Evans, over the years, if you look at our fiscal policy and how we have managed these affairs, it's increasingly becoming very difficult for the average Ghanaian to accumulate capital and do anything. I'll give you an example. If you look at data from the Ghana Statistical Service, close to 44% of household expenditure is on food alone. Now, so if you take your disposable income and you look at the segregation, it leaves very little for savings, for building reserves for the future. To make matters worse, we have presided over a tax structure that is heavily reliant on indirect tax handles, which worsens inequality. Okay. So if you put all these things together, and even we'll get into that, and you look at it vis-a-vis the intentions in the 2023 budget, for now it's intention because the budget baseline represents intentions. You now have to approve and translate the intentions into actual. If you look at the intentions in the 2023 budget, we are creating a financially repressed society, right? At a very broad base, which then only makes it possible for a tiny few at the apex of it to control the financial wealth and dictate whatever that happens.
And I guess then that leaves you with ownership of property, a house. It leaves you just dreaming about it and never.
And that is why it's difficult operationalizing property tax, because those who own those properties are that influential and will negotiate out of it.
I mean,
right?
let me quickly come to the studio and talk to my two politician friends who are joining me now in the studio. Alex Egbefia with the NDC and John Kumar, the Deputy Finance Minister. Alex, this Saglemi housing, what I call an albatross, is really an albatross because it's been on the necks of this government for so long. The pictures that we were just viewing are pretty heartbreaking pictures. Overrun with weeds, those are the pictures. If you see that the doors have been fitted, I saw kitchens have been fitted already. I mean, and I wonder why would we do this when we spend $200 million, dollars on it? But if you go back to the conception of this idea by the NDC government, of which we were part of, the UN says for anything to become affordable in terms of housing, you have to spend, not more than 30% of your salary on it. As at that time, according to the Hansard, a pricing of this, one unit was going to go for $50,200 if you look at it. At that time, of course, the dollar to the CD wasn't as terrible as this. It was, just close to 1:3.5, 4 thereabout by 2016 when you're leaving. So if you're doing the maths, you're probably paying just over 200,000 CD for it. Many will argue that even at that cost, many Ghanaians, 30% of the salary would still be not classified as affordable for them. So would you accept at least that even at your time, and by the way, you also didn't meet the timeline for finishing it before you exited in 2016. So both parties, at least you conceived it, they pointed up fingers at you. You accept any responsibility for why it's become an albatross and why they now have to simply cut their losses and get a private sector guy in?
Absolutely none. Good morning to you, Evans, and good morning to my colleague who hasn't slept for 1 year. And
possibly more.
Yes. And good morning to your viewers. Simple answer, no. Government projects have some difficulty almost invariably. Some are on time and get done and are in place. Some overlap governments. And we tend to find, historically, that those that are actually close to completion or completed, just waiting technically for commissioning, are the ones that stay. But anything that is close to completion, all manner of excuses are given by an incoming government as to why they shouldn't complete, and shrouded in corruption, etc., etc. By the end of it all, they still come back to the same projects, do some refinancing, and that's the end of it. But it is only, for me, premised on one thing. If you complete a project of your predecessor, he gets some of the credit. And that is an unfortunate syndrome we have in our country.
But to be fair, you completed affordable housing project that Kufuor did, you used the SNIT route to finish the affordable housing.
Some are more culpable than others.
Sorry? They didn't. Okay, well, we'll come to that.
Some are more culpable than others. And I'm clear in my mind about that. Why do I say that? The one president who tried to break this type of them and us syndrome was Professor J.E.A. Mills of blessed memory. And he demonstrated it clearly, not just by finishing projects, but inviting his predecessor on 2 separate occasions to commission projects that his predecessor had brought in.
Highway on my...
The highway and Buida. Both were projects that were started by Kufuor. He didn't see the end of it. President Mills was the one who was in office at the time they were completed. He brought him in. No slowdown in the project, no stopping for investigation. It went through the processes. And even if there were investigations to be carried out, they were carried out on the sideline without affecting the projects. Nobody can gainsay what I've said. Facts. So it is always the person at the helm that must understand what he is doing and why. And this MPP is going to get credit to any. Professor Mills just didn't wear it. He didn't buy it. And by that vein, President Mahama had to follow suit because that is what he inherited. So I'm at a loss, a serious loss, to understand housing projects by their nature require subsidizing.
If you want to keep it as affordable.
If you want to keep it as affordable, by their very nature. Look, let me give you an example which happened in their time for them to understand the difference between a government project and a private project. We were all in this country when a group of private entrepreneurs got together and decided to build a hospital center, COVID issue, around the corner. They did it in record time. I think it was 18 months. It was up and there. Private company. They are counting their pennies. They know where this is going. This, that. That's not government project. That is not government project. And the question is, why? But let's put that aside. The important thing is, if you then plan on that type of private enterprise, you get it completely wrong because of the loop, the hurdles that must be passed through, the issues of approvals, etc., that must be gone through in any government enterprise. And what do I mean? Based on that model, the president is able to stand and tell the whole world, I'll build 88 hospitals in 1 year. Because he is still in the private sector. I will build 100, when the years pass, he hasn't learned his lesson. He goes and says, I'll build 111 hospitals in 18 months. Not a single one is standing. When the private sector was doing theirs, they had costed it. They knew exactly where they were getting their money from. And when from the day they started building to the end, they had timelined it. They count their money. Government don't do that. Because even when we ask the government, how much is the 111 hospitals? In fact, the 88, which then turned to 100, how much was it going to cost? It was Nyami Woho. God will see us through.
Yeah, but that's an indictment on both your party and his.
Why? In what way?
I mean, but what you're saying is that, I mean, if you look at the fact, on Saglemi, back to the point.
Yes, but
you didn't finish on time.
I'm saying to you that,
so
at what percentage
apply?
So let me say why there's no comparison. At the time we left, Saglemi was at the least 88, at the most 90% complete.
But you didn't finish.
So give us 10% and insult us, we will take it. How many of the 111 hospitals are complete? What's the percentage?
Okay, I mean, I want to move away from...
But I want you to understand there's a difference. You raised the point, so I'm just making you understand that. There's a huge difference between almost complete and nowhere close to completion with based on timelines. But let's come on track on Saglemi. It's a housing project. Why would you leave a housing project for 6 years without doing anything?
Well, they do due diligence on what had been spent already. There was also a huge audit that was commissioned, and prosecutions have started. They wanted to make sure that what they have inherited, there's value for money before they pump more money.
Could we have done that on Widam?
Maybe they didn't give you any reason to.
That is not the case.
And you gave them a lot of reasons to do what they
No, that is not the case at all. Why? They did the same thing with the hospital projects. I was in the Minister of Health. I kept telling them, part of the problem with the hospital project stalling was because of land issues. So when we had to build a hospital in Western Region, we had changed site twice already, and we were on our third. So that caused a delay in terms of, and that is why we said you can't build 111, because the kind of land issues and protocol issues that exist in terms of government funding, it is not viable to be making those type of comments. What did we see? They made a whole rift, did a lot of investigation. In the end, they've got the extra funding that is needed, and the hospital projects that were abandoned are back on stream going.
Are you suggesting that then, what I've heard, that you think the government in this case of Saglemi should get money and finish and not privatize?
No need, they shouldn't privatize.
Okay.
Even if it means subsidizing, it is worthwhile.
But Alex, to be realistic, we are right now with our current economic condition on the brink of an IMF.
I have that when you start going down that road, I don't want to hear it, because our current economic situation was created by them.
Yeah, of course, but no problem.
So please.
But that's the reality.
So, but they are not prepared to admit it. So don't tell me to be admitting things that I'm not prepared.
No, but the reality is the economy cannot afford that.
The reality is that they should cut government expenditure. That is the reality. They've been talking about reduction of expenditure, and they have to cut projects. Which projects are they cutting?
Okay, we'll come to that.
Exactly.
Budget substantive.
That's why I'm saying that.
So you think that they can find the money?
They can find the money.
They can only go for a loan. I mean,
why should they go for a loan? I said cut expenditure.
Okay, and
if
then
you're already spending the money,
savings to
yes,
do
exactly. Why?
Okay. Let me bring in the finance minister. Is that something that you can do? Is it as simple as that?
Well, that even sounds contradictory. But let me start by greeting Dr. Theo and Prof. and Nima and Dr. Saglemi.
I'm not doctor. I'm just Alex.
Mr.
Mr.
Saglemi.
I'm in health.
Do you know, because you went to health ministry, I've always thought you were a doctor. Yes. So my senior learned Alex Saglemi. You know, the last suggestion he gave was very contradictory when he said government must cut expenditure. And then at the same time, you're asking us to go and find the money to come and do government projects. That's very contradictory. We are cutting expenditure by looking at other alternative sources. But let me go into the background of the discussion. Saglemi, affordable housing, and to correct the impression he just made that they were 98% completed.
Not 98.
He said what?
90.
90% completed.
Okay. Between 88 and 90.
Okay, let's even give you 80% completed. The NDC government signed agreement to build 10,000 affordable housing at the cost of $200 million. 10,000 units. Before they left power, they reviewed the units to 5,000 at the same cost. 200 million. Reduced the 10,000 units to 5,000 at the same cost, 200 million. In the end, what really transpired there, and that is the genesis of all the confusion, is that we have 1,510 units that have actually been built, and all the funds are gone. The 200 million is suspended. So if you are talking, here he says it's 80% complete. 80% of what? 1,500 of the 10,000 units gives you what? 50%.
I thought it was the 5,000 units, not 10,000 units.
10,000 reviewed to 5,000, and they actually built one is 1,500.
Yeah.
So what, in terms of percentage?
Uncompleted built one.
The uncompleted built one. It's 1,500. That's just 15% of the original unit you wanted to build. So his 80% completion, what is he talking about? 80% of what?
80% of 1,500.
But is that a target? Is that a contract? So there's a serious problem, and that is why we are talking about the project at the moment becoming unaffordable. Because if you peg 200 million to do 10,000, and you have only done 1,500, already it is unaffordable. Now government must cut its losses in the circumstances. And here's the case is advising government to cut expenditure. If you ask government to cut expenditure, one of the key expenditures government can cut is looking for alternatives to complete projects like Saglemi, which is already been mismanaged.
Not already burdening the debt.
For instance, Nima Hama, the engineer, spoke about go and borrow to complete it. You see, when you borrow, there's an element of interest government will continue to pay.
But this was a loan too, by the way, the 200 million.
Exactly.
Have we finished
so there's
paying?
already, no, we haven't finished.
You're still paying?
Yes.
Wow,
It's
and the thing is
already
occupied.
We've not even completed it. But this is the circumstances that have delayed. So the investigation to find out why 10,000 units were supposed to be built and only 1,500 has been built and all the funds are gone is the reason why we are where we are.
But John Kumar, you could have done those investigations.
Yes, and continue. I agree. I'm not exonerating our lack of focus on that project. I mean, for me, it's very regrettable.
That's an admission that...
Yes, it's very regrettable. And you see, it's not only to do with the NPP. I think Dr. Teo talked about the attitude of the Ghanaian. And yes, the Ghanaian government in general, not just NPP or NDC. Leonard Segbefia talked about what Professor Mills did, and it's commendable with the George Walker Bush Highway and the Bui Dam. But at the same time, under Professor Mills, Wankra Inland Port was abandoned till date. At the same time, that Sokore, what do you call it, affordable housing you are talking about, was abandoned for almost over 8. It's been completed when we came through SNET. Okay.
So are you saying you...
Yes, NPP government came to complete affordable that Sokore Mampong from President Kufuor.
I know that will be challenged because...
No, it cannot be challenged.
They, when they came in, went to SNET and did that arrangement to finish it.
It cannot be challenged. They know it. And there's another affordable enclave between Tema and Pram.
Yeah,
that one was also abandoned. Sofola interchange was abandoned. There were several projects that they abandoned and didn't complete. And when the NPP government came, we had to complete them. That is not to say we have any good reason for losing focus on Saglemi whilst we were investigating the circumstances on this project, because of course it's heartbreaking to see all these facilities lying and people cannot use them. But this is where I come back to how do we handle it?
Your approach is prioritizing.
Exactly.
So you're admitting that you're no longer treating it as affordable.
It's no longer affordable per the arrangement that has happened to it. Nobody, if you divide 200 million by 10,000, you are going to get it like $20,000. And they reviewed it to 5,000, making it about $40,000 or $50,000 per unit. And now it's 1,500. So how affordable can that be? So in the present circumstances, the best option is to bring in the private sector.
How transparent are you approaching this private sector interest in it? Because that's, for me,
that is where the issue is.
Yes, it's grounded in what we've seen in the past.
I think there was a first person you spoke to.
Yes, who made that point. Yeah.
Who was that? He was.
Oh, I mean, there was a press conference.
It was a press conference
from the minority. They went
exactly.
There. The suspicion is that
they will give to friends and cronies. Yes, I think that is where the issue is. But there are laws, procurement rules, and the need to go through processes to get the best. And I believe that if that is the concern, we can get the Parliamentary Committee on Works and Housing and the Ministry of Works and Housing and even the Minority Caucus to be part of this so that we can have an open, transparent process that will settle on a competent private sector partner to complete this project. And then if government still wants to make it affordable in terms of interventions, even the interest that could be paid by government for new borrowings can then be designed into a support system for households and individuals or companies that may want to go into that affordable housing project. No more affordable.
Has the private partner player been selected already?
I have no idea. I know that the announcement has just been made. and it's under discussions. I don't even think anybody has been selected. But like I'm saying, if that is the concern, which I agree that it must not be treated to give advantage to any specific group of people. We should be honest and transparent about it and allow a partner with competence and the resources to come and complete it. And if people and government still think that we have to intervene to make it more affordable for people who, the beneficiaries who use it, government can have another scheme of support. But we cannot, in the present circumstances of economic hardship, where Leonard Segbefia is advising us to cut expenditure and at the same time telling us to go and borrow to go and complete a project.
I've never told you to borrow.
Okay, to find money.
It says cut expenditure.
Yes, cut expenditure.
Cut expenditure.
I don't know where you are cutting it. So when you cut, one of the cuts
I'll show you.
when you cut expenditure, is to stop, mismanaged projects like Saglemi and find alternative sources of completion and redirect resources to more essential demands.
Alex, he admits that not focusing on it whilst doing investigations is regrettable, and that where we are now, the only option is to pursue private. At least you give him that.
I give him credit for that. There are no two ways. I mean, he's been honest and clear that the 6 years of not doing anything is, and my view is always this: if there are prosecutions or issues with projects, by all means pursue them. I don't have a problem with that. But don't kill the project in the process. And you have to, we don't mitigate loss. We do it as a legal issue. When you study law, mitigation of loss is crucial. So if you go to court and you actually haven't mitigated your loss, whatever you are looking for, your damages or whatever you are seeking may be completely reduced or eroded if your actions are such that you could have actually done better if you are taking steps to mitigate your loss. And the problem with governments is that they never mitigate their loss. They want it to look bad for the other side, so they don't touch it. And that, for me, is absolutely, completely the problem we have with Saglemi. Now, worse than that, the reason why I'm very unhappy about it, in terms of looking at the figures of costing and whatnot, is one, any calculations you do now are based on an exchange rate which is over the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two, the fixtures and fittings which were already on site because of a lack of security have been taken. Doors have been taken. Yeah. Electrical, you've seen the pictures.
Yeah.
So we have had, it's not that the money was not spent. Now you have to go and spend that money over again. And you're asking a private investor to do that. What is the aim of a private investor? His is to seek profit. So he's going to let you understand that this thing is so badly run down that I can only buy it for 20p, as opposed to the 1 CD you are asking for. Yeah. And therefore, for me to then put it all in place, and he's got profit in his mind. Whereas if the government goes in, does the best it can in the circumstance, and as one of our experts mentioned, there are different financial packages that you can put in place. Yes, you cannot do all affordable, but you can do it in such a way that some of it is affordable. And if it was supposed to be 5,000, 10,000, and you have 1,500, you spend this money on it. At the end of the day, whatever the private investor is coming to give you will not cover the cost. You're going to still take a hit. So factor that hit in, take control of it, and make sure that some of our people, we did it in the Ministry of Defense housing projects that we went ahead, and we had to cover some of the cost. We've got problems with a hospital that we started, Bank of Ghana Hospital, in terms of the cost. There was a way we had to go around it and see how best. So there are ways. And all I'm saying is that it is better for the ordinary Ghanaian to benefit, and government takes a hit, which it is going to take, but benefiting the ordinary Ghanaian, then putting it in a position where now an already rich person is going to get richer off the back of a problem that exists. And that is where some of us have the problem.
On the Asokore Mampon issue, keeping them honest, John Kuma was right. Yeah. It was completed, according to Slate themselves, in 2020, but it was the John Mahama administration that took the decision to hand it over to SNIT in 2015 to complete it. So he had inherited it. Instead of abandoning it, they thought up an idea, why don't you get SNIT involved? In 2015, they asked SNIT to take over. SNIT started
So
doing
it's
it.
completed. We are all grateful.
And then
Ghana moves forward.
Yes.
Why? We should do that for every project.
So it's a beautiful one. So the baton started, the relay started with John Kufuor.
Yeah.
Mills comes in, Mills, Mahama, fine, don't leave it. Started it, and then you complete.
There are several projects like that. The University of Ghana Hospital. President Kufuor started the funding. Yeah. President Mahama started it. President Kufuor completed it.
Yeah, beautiful.
The Eurojet projects, hospitals across the country.
So why can't you do that for everything?
It goes on. Exactly. That's why I said a lack of focus. Because sometimes, depending on the circumstances surrounding certain projects, it becomes controversial and then we lose focus. And I think we have to address that as government for all parties.
I want to wrap this up and return for the budget with Engineer Mahama. Very quickly, the bigger picture though, is that we still have that affordable housing project still, not complete. We've seen that has become a challenge. It's not. I guess it's not a coincidence that almost all affordable housing projects are started and we don't finish it within the timelines, and then the cost shoots up. The controversy around it. What will be your recommendation for fixing that challenge going forward? And should government still be some would think government should not even be the business of doing affordable housing. Just incentivize private sector to do it. Create environment, and they will do the private, the affordable housing schemes, and then just get out of the space. What's your recommendation there, Engineer Mahama, very quickly? Please unmute for me if you've muted. Sorry? Mr. Mama, can you hear me? Unmute? Okay, good. Well, that's it for this segment. It was brief, wrapping up on Saglemi. Hello, Mr. Mahama. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I can hear you now.
Where is Mama?
Okay, I was asking you, big picture, how do we resolve this bigger challenge we have with government involved in affordable housing that always gets into some trouble, cost shoots up, and then we struggle with it? How do you fix that problem? Should government still be involved there, or should just focus on creating an environment for private sector to handle affordable housing going forward?
I can handle here.
Okay. Unfortunately, I think we have to end it here. Mr. Mahama, I'm grateful that you joined us. I want to take a quick break. When I return, we'll get into the budget conversation for the next 2 hours. Remember that Newsfile is always brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Star Assurance, your solid partner. Ashasa University, educating ethical entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Duraplus, how you get your water matters. Remember, where Duraplus goes, water flows. St. Thomas Eye Hospital, providing excellence in eye care. Haptel, everything you. And My Way Insurance, dial *165# on the MTN to join. Macdan Aviation, your dependable private aviation requests resolved. After this, the budget.